Listen closely, my friends. There is a silent law the world never tells you. People don't always respect the kindest person, and they certainly don't respect the loudest one. They respect the person they know they cannot control. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Stoics discovered something most people still fail to understand. The greatest power is not over others, it is over yourself. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That single truth changed emperors, warriors, and ordinary men alike. Think about your own life. How many times have you stayed silent after being disrespected, believing you were choosing peace? How many times did you forgive too quickly, explain yourself too much, or keep giving chances to people who had already decided they would never value you? Every one of those moments quietly taught the world the same lesson. There are no consequences for crossing my boundaries. The Stoics warned against this long before modern psychology ever existed. Epictetus taught that the moment another person's behavior begins controlling your emotions, you have handed them authority over your life. A person who cannot govern himself will always be governed by someone else. That is why Stoicism was never about looking calm. It was about becoming impossible to manipulate. Most people believe punishment means revenge. They think power is found in anger, louder words, or proving someone wrong. Stoicism teaches the exact opposite. The strongest punishment is becoming a person who no longer rewards disrespect with attention, emotion, or unlimited access. Nothing unsettles a careless person more than realizing they have lost influence over someone they thought they could control. This is why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that he would meet arrogant, dishonest, selfish, and disrespectful people. Not because he expected the world to change, but because he refused to let the world change him. The Stoic never prepares to control other people. He prepares to master his own response before the battle even begins. In this video, you will discover 7 Stoic laws that make people think twice before they ever disrespect you again. These are not manipulation tactics, and they are not mind games. They are timeless principles forged through Stoic philosophy, tested by emperors like Marcus Aurelius, teachers like Epictetus, and thinkers like Seneca. Principles that transform not only the way others see you, but the way you carry yourself. Stay with me until the final law, because the 7th law is the one most people spend their entire lives missing. Once you truly understand it, you will stop chasing respect forever. Instead, you will become the kind of person whose presence alone makes others choose their words carefully. Because real Stoic power is never announced. It is quietly felt. Law 1. The law of the unshakable mind. Imagine a towering cliff standing against the endless force of the sea. For centuries, the waves have crashed against it with relentless violence, yet the cliff never argues with the ocean, never asks the storm to be merciful, and never abandons its place. The sea eventually grows tired, but the cliff remains exactly where it has always been. This is not just nature. This is the first lesson of Stoicism. True strength is not found in striking back. It is found in becoming impossible to move. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than anyone. Every day he ruled an empire filled with betrayal, criticism, and people waiting for him to lose control. Yet instead of preparing sharper words, he prepared a stronger mind. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." Those words were never meant to deny pain. They were meant to remind us that the greatest battle is never against another person. It is against the impulse to surrender our peace. Most people lose respect long before anyone insults them. They lose it the moment they allow another person's opinion to dictate their emotions. The instant your mood rises and falls according to someone else's words, you have quietly handed them the keys to your inner kingdom. The Stoics believed this was the beginning of slavery, not slavery of the body, but slavery of the mind. And a person who cannot govern his own mind will spend his entire life being governed by everyone else's behavior. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, discovered a truth that even powerful rulers struggled to understand. He said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Think about that for a moment. A careless insult has no power of its own. It becomes powerful only when your emotions decide to breathe life into it. Without your reaction, the insult dies the moment it leaves the other person's mouth. That is why the Stoics never rushed to defend their ego. They understood something the modern world has forgotten. When someone desperately wants a reaction from you, your anger becomes their victory. Your frustration becomes their reward. But your calmness, your complete emotional discipline, leaves them standing alone with nothing to fight against. Nothing unsettles an arrogant person more than realizing they no longer have the power to disturb your peace. Seneca warned that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. A few seconds of silence can protect years of dignity. Every insult offers you two paths. One path satisfies your ego for a moment, but costs your self-control. The other strengthens your character while leaving the other person alone with the consequences of their own behavior. Stoicism always chooses the second path because character is worth infinitely more than winning an argument. So the first law is simple, but it is not easy. Become emotionally unshakable. Let people discover that your peace is no longer something they can steal with a sentence, a laugh, or a careless opinion. The day they realize they cannot control your emotions is the day they begin losing the desire to challenge you. Respect begins where manipulation ends. But remaining calm is only the first step. Calmness without boundaries eventually becomes silent suffering. The Stoics never taught people to become doormats disguised as philosophers. They taught them when to remain silent and when to quietly close the gate. Law 2, the law of the locked gate. There is a reason ancient cities survived invasions that destroyed entire kingdoms. It was never because their walls were the tallest. It was because their gates were opened with wisdom, not emotion. The Stoics believed your mind should be guarded the same way. A life without boundaries is like a city without gates. Anyone can enter, take what they want, and leave without consequence. The tragedy is that most people don't lose their peace because others are cruel. They lose it because they never decided who deserved access to it in the first place. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire on earth, yet he never believed every person deserved equal access to his time, attention, or trust. Stoicism teaches that your energy is part of your character, and character must never be wasted on those committed to disrespect. As Epictetus reminded his students, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The Stoic does not simply protect his emotions. He protects the doorway through which those emotions are reached. Most people confuse kindness with unlimited availability. They answer every message immediately, forgive every betrayal instantly, explain every decision endlessly, and then wonder why nobody values their presence. But what is always available is rarely appreciated. Nature itself teaches the opposite lesson. The sun does not shine all night to prove its kindness. The ocean does not leave its shore to satisfy every traveler. Even the seasons understand the power of limits. Why, then, do you believe your life should remain permanently open to people who repeatedly disrespect it? Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Think about how many hours people lose imagining conversations they should have never entertained, defending themselves against accusations they never deserved, or carrying the emotional weight of people who have already shown they do not care. Every unnecessary explanation is another piece of your peace handed away for free. The Stoic understands that silence often protects dignity far better than endless justification. This is why powerful people rarely announce their boundaries. They simply live by them. A locked gate never argues with the stranger standing outside. It never apologizes for existing. It simply remains closed. Your standards should work the same way. The moment a boundary requires constant negotiation, it has already stopped being a boundary. It has become a request, and requests can always be ignored. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people spend years avoiding. The people who become angry when you finally say no are often the same people who benefited the most from the fact that you never said it before. Their frustration is not proof that your boundary is wrong. It is proof that your old obedience was convenient. Stoicism does not ask you to carry the burden of everyone's expectations. It asks you to carry the responsibility of your own character. Marcus Aurelius once reflected that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But the same is true of the people you repeatedly allow into your inner world. Spend enough time around disrespect, manipulation, and selfishness, and even a disciplined mind begins to grow tired. The Stoic, therefore, chooses companions with the same care a king chooses those allowed inside his fortress. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table simply because they know your name. Guard your gate before you guard your heart. Respect begins the moment people realize your time, attention, and presence are privileges, not entitlements. When access to you must be earned instead of assumed, disrespect quietly becomes far more expensive than most people are willing to pay. Law 3. The Law of the Inner Fortress. Imagine a fortress standing alone on a mountain. Armies have surrounded it for centuries. Kings have tried to conquer it. Enemies have attacked it from every direction. Yet they all failed for one simple reason. The fortress was never destroyed from the outside. It could only fall if someone inside opened the gate. The Stoics believed your mind works exactly the same way. No insult, betrayal, or humiliation can truly conquer you unless your own judgment grants it permission to enter. Epictetus knew this truth better than anyone because he discovered it while living as a slave. His body belonged to another man, but his mind never did. That is why he left the world with one of the most powerful principles in Stoic philosophy. No man is free who is not master of himself. Think about that carefully. Freedom has never depended on your circumstances. It has always depended on whether your emotions obey your wisdom or someone else's behavior. This is why most people lose battles they never needed to fight. Someone ignores their message and they lose their peace. Someone criticizes their work and they lose confidence. Someone chooses another person over them and suddenly they begin questioning their own worth. None of those events possess power by themselves. The suffering begins the moment the mind whispers, "This changes who I am." The Stoics rejected that lie completely. They believed another person's opinion can never redefine a soul that already knows its own value. Marcus Aurelius carried this understanding into every conflict he faced. Surrounded by betrayal, corruption, and constant political games, he reminded himself daily, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Notice what he did not say. He did not say, "Your happiness depends on loyal friends, respectful people, or a peaceful world." He understood that everything outside your character is temporary. The only kingdom you truly possess is the one inside your own mind. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control other people's mouths instead of controlling their own thoughts. They want the world to become kinder before they become peaceful. But Stoicism reverses that order. Master your mind first, and the world's insults begin losing their meaning. A disciplined mind does not deny pain. It simply refuses to let pain become its identity. Seneca offered another timeless warning. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about how many nights have been stolen, not by what actually happened, but by the stories your mind kept repeating afterward. One careless sentence becomes 100 imaginary conversations. One act of disrespect becomes weeks of silent resentment. The event lasted seconds. The suffering lasted months. The Stoic breaks that cycle by refusing to replay what no longer deserves his attention. This is the hidden secret behind people who naturally command respect. They are not fearless because life has been easy. They are fearless because they stopped asking the world for permission to feel worthy. Their confidence is no longer rented from compliments, approval, or applause. It is built on something the Stoics considered unbreakable: virtue. When your character becomes your greatest possession, nothing another person says can make you poorer. Build an inner fortress that no opinion can invade. The moment people realize they cannot manipulate your emotions, your confidence, or your identity, they begin understanding a silent truth. They are no longer dealing with the version of you they once controlled. And when control disappears, disrespect usually disappears with it. But there is one mistake even disciplined people continue making. They stop reacting, yet they never stop explaining. They defend every decision, justify every boundary, and unknowingly place themselves on trial before people who never deserve to become their judges. Law 4. The law of the closed trial. Imagine standing inside a courtroom where every person is waiting for you to defend yourself. One questions your intentions, another doubts your decisions. A third twists your words until they no longer resemble the truth. Most people panic in that moment. They begin explaining, justifying, and desperately trying to convince everyone that they are innocent. But the Stoics understood a dangerous truth. The moment you feel obligated to explain yourself to everyone, you have already accepted them as the judges of your life. Marcus Aurelius never ruled by chasing approval. Every decision he made was criticized by someone. Had he stopped to defend every accusation, he would have spent his life answering voices instead of leading an empire. That is why he reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice what he did not add. He never said, make sure everyone agrees with you. Stoicism measures your actions by virtue, not by applause. Think about how often this happens in everyday life. Someone sends you a cold message, and you immediately write 3 paragraphs explaining yourself. A friend misunderstands your silence, and you rush to justify your intentions. A coworker questions your decision, and suddenly you feel the need to prove your worth. Every unnecessary explanation quietly tells the other person, your approval decides whether I feel at peace. Without realizing it, you have placed your confidence in someone else's hands. Epictetus warned his students that those who seek validation become prisoners of the people they hope will approve of them. The Stoic never wastes his life arguing with every opinion. He understands that people committed to misunderstanding, you will always find another reason to do so. No explanation can satisfy a mind that has already chosen its conclusion. Wisdom is knowing when silence carries more authority than another sentence ever could. This does not mean refusing to communicate. Stoicism never encourages arrogance or emotional distance. If you have made a mistake, admit it clearly. If someone sincerely deserves an explanation, offer it honestly. But never confuse honesty with endless self-defense. The first builds character. The second slowly destroys it. There is a point where explaining yourself is no longer truth. It becomes fear wearing the mask of politeness. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Real courage is not raising your voice. Real courage is remaining at peace even when someone chooses not to understand you. There is enormous strength in knowing that your character speaks long after your words have ended. People may question your decisions today, but consistency will answer them far better than arguments ever will. Close the trial before it begins. Stop placing your life before an imaginary jury that has no authority over your character. Let your actions become your evidence, your discipline become your witness, and your peace become the final verdict. The people who truly matter will understand without endless explanations, and those determined to judge you would never have accepted your defense anyway. Law 5. The Law of the Vanishing Reward. There is an old saying in Stoic thought, "What you reward, you strengthen." Most people never realize that disrespect survives for one reason alone. It keeps receiving a reward. Sometimes the reward is your anger. Sometimes it is your attention. Sometimes it is the endless explanations, emotional arguments, or second chances you continue giving. Every time someone crosses your boundaries and still receives the same version of you, they unconsciously learn a dangerous lesson. There is no price for disrespecting this person. And human nature rarely abandons behavior that continues to pay. Imagine feeding a fire every single day. At first it burns quietly, then it grows stronger, hotter, and more demanding. Eventually it becomes so large that you convince yourself it can no longer be controlled. But the fire never possessed power on its own. It only consumed what you continued placing into it. The Stoics believed toxic people behave the same way. They do not survive on strength. They survive on the emotional fuel you unknowingly provide. Remove the fuel, and even the fiercest fire begins to die. Seneca understood this deeply. He wrote, "The greatest revenge is not to become like your enemy." Most people misunderstand those words. They think Seneca was teaching forgiveness without consequence. He wasn't. He was teaching something far more difficult. Do not let another person's character dictate your own. If someone is manipulative, your answer is not manipulation. If someone is disrespectful, your answer is not hatred. Your answer is to remove the very thing they were hoping to receive from you, your emotional investment. Think about the people who constantly interrupt you, cancel plans without respect, ignore your messages until they need something, or only appear when life becomes convenient for them. Most individuals keep rewarding this behavior. They continue replying instantly. They continue making themselves available. They continue offering kindness without wisdom. Then they wonder why nothing changes. But Stoicism reminds us that character without boundaries becomes permission. Every reward you continue giving teaches another person exactly how little your peace is worth. Marcus Aurelius never believed everyone deserved equal access to his attention. As emperor, thousands demanded his time, his emotions, and his energy. Had he tried to satisfy every voice, he would have abandoned the one responsibility that mattered most, governing himself. This is why he constantly returned to one principle. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Every minute you spend feeding disrespect is another minute your own character absorbs unnecessary bitterness. The Stoic protects his peace because peace is the soil where wisdom grows. Now comes the hardest part. Withdrawal is not punishment, it is revelation. The moment you quietly stop rewarding disrespect, you begin discovering who truly valued you and who only valued what you gave them. Some people will suddenly become distant. Others will become angry. A few may even accuse you of changing. But understand what is really happening. They are not grieving the loss of you. They are grieving the loss of unrestricted access to you. There is a profound difference, and Stoicism teaches you to recognize it without resentment. Epictetus warned that freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of one's desires, but by the removal of desire. The deepest form of freedom arrives when you no longer crave everyone's approval, everyone's understanding, or everyone's presence. At that moment, your silence becomes genuine, your kindness becomes intentional, your attention becomes valuable because it is no longer available to everyone. The world begins treating you differently the day you stop giving away what should have been earned. Never reward the behavior you pray will disappear. Your attention is valuable. Your time is valuable. Your presence is valuable. Give them only where they are respected, never where they are exploited. The strongest punishment is not making someone suffer. It is allowing them to experience a life where your value is no longer freely available. Sometimes absence teaches a lesson that words never could. Law 6, the law of measured fire. Fire has always been misunderstood. Most people believe its greatest power lies in how fiercely it burns. But a blacksmith knows the opposite is true. A fire that burns out of control destroys everything around it. A fire that is measured, disciplined, and patiently directed forges steel strong enough to survive generations. The Stoics believed anger follows the same law. Uncontrolled anger makes you dangerous for a moment. Controlled strength makes you unforgettable for a lifetime. The world fears the second far more than the first. Marcus Aurelius spent years leading armies across brutal battlefields where a single emotional decision could cost thousands of lives. Yet he constantly reminded himself, the best revenge is not to become like the one who performed the injury. This was never an invitation to become passive. It was a command to remain sovereign over your own character. The moment another person's disrespect determines your behavior, they have already won the battle without lifting a sword. Stoicism teaches that victory begins where emotional dependence ends. Look carefully at the people who command the deepest respect. They are rarely the loudest person in the room. They do not threaten every disagreement or explode at every challenge. Instead, they possess something far more unsettling. They are predictable in principle, but unpredictable in consequence. They remain calm until a boundary is crossed. And when it is crossed, they act decisively, quietly, and without emotion. No shouting, no speeches, no attempts to humiliate. Just action. That is why people remember their boundaries long after they forget someone else's anger. Epictetus warned, no great thing is created suddenly. Character is forged through thousands of small decisions that nobody applauds. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, silence over ego, or wisdom over revenge, you are strengthening an invisible part of yourself. Eventually, people notice something they cannot easily explain. They sense that provoking you no longer produces the emotional reward it once did. They realize your patience is not weakness, it is control. And there is nothing more intimidating than a person who controls himself completely. Think about a workplace where one employee constantly argues whenever criticized, while another listens calmly, says very little, and quietly improves their work. Months later, who carries more authority? Or imagine two fathers correcting a child. One screams in frustration until his words lose all meaning. The other speaks once, enforces the consequence consistently, and never raises his voice again. Which lesson lasts longer? The Stoics understood that volume impresses the insecure, but consistency commands the wise. Seneca gave one of the greatest warnings about anger ever written. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Every uncontrolled reaction leaves a scar on your own character before it ever reaches another person. You may win the argument, but lose your dignity. You may satisfy your ego, but weaken your discipline. Stoicism refuses that trade. The Stoic never asks, "How do I hurt them back?" He asks, "Will this action make me stronger tomorrow than I am today?" If the answer is no, he walks away without regret. This is why measured fire is so rare. It demands something most people never develop: the ability to separate emotion from decision. The average person reacts first and thinks later. The Stoic thinks first, acts deliberately, and never apologizes for protecting what matters. His strength is not emotional, it is intentional. That difference changes everything. People stop testing someone whose responses are guided by principles instead of moods, because principles cannot be manipulated. Let your discipline burn hotter than your anger. Anyone can explode when they are disrespected. Very few can remain calm, enforce a consequence, and continue walking forward without carrying bitterness. That is the kind of strength Stoicism calls virtue, and it is the kind of strength that quietly teaches people there are lines they should never cross. But there is one final illusion that still traps most people. They believe respect comes from proving their value over and over again. The Stoics believed the opposite. The seventh law reveals why the people who know their worth rarely feel the need to display it. Law 7. The law of silent value. Imagine walking through a forest where the tallest oak tree stands in complete silence. It never announces how deep its roots are. It never competes with the smaller trees around it. It simply stands firm while storms come and go. The Stoics believed a person of true character should live the same way. The things that possess genuine value rarely feel the need to advertise themselves. It is only what is uncertain of its worth that constantly seeks attention. One of the greatest weaknesses of the human ego is the desire to be recognized. We want people to notice our kindness, appreciate our sacrifices, admire our discipline, and acknowledge our value. But the moment your peace depends on someone else's recognition, you have unknowingly handed them authority over your self-worth. That is why Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." The Stoic never asks, "Do they see my value?" He asks, "Am I living according to my values?" Think about how often people destroy their own dignity trying to prove they deserve respect. They over-explain their achievements, remind others of everything they have done, chase appreciation that never comes, and become frustrated when their efforts are ignored. But respect that must be demanded is never genuine. The Stoics understood that the louder you advertise your worth, the less people feel it. True authority is experienced long before it is spoken. Epictetus warned his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Those words contain an entire lifetime of wisdom. Your discipline should introduce you before your words ever do. Your consistency should speak before your opinions. Your calmness should answer insults before your mouth opens. A person who truly possesses character has very little to prove, because his daily actions quietly repeat the same message over and over again. Consider the sun for a moment. It never asks the world to believe it will rise tomorrow. It simply rises. day after day, year after year. That quiet consistency creates trust stronger than any promise ever could. Human character follows the same law. Every promise you repeatedly break weakens your presence. Every promise you silently keep strengthens it. People eventually stop listening to what you say and start believing what you consistently do. This is why Stoicism values habit above performance and virtue above reputation. Seneca wrote, "Be more concerned with the character of your conscience than the opinion of the crowd." Most people spend years polishing an image while neglecting the person behind it. They look powerful in public, but feel empty in private. The Stoic reverses that order. He builds his inner character first, knowing that reputation is only the shadow cast by virtue. Chase the shadow, and you lose both. Build the substance, and the shadow follows naturally. Here is the paradox that changes everything. The less desperate you become for respect, the more naturally people begin to respect you. The less you seek approval, the more valuable your approval becomes. The less you chase attention, the more your presence is noticed. This is not manipulation. It is human nature. People instinctively value what is complete within itself. A mountain does not ask anyone to admire its height, yet everyone who stands before it feels its greatness. Stop proving your value. Start protecting it. Let your discipline become your introduction, your principles become your reputation, and your consistency become your loudest voice. When people realize your confidence is built on virtue instead of validation, they also realize something else. You are no longer a person who can be controlled through praise, criticism, or rejection. And that is where real respect begins. Before you leave this video, remember one truth the Stoics never stopped repeating. The strongest person is not the one who controls others, but the one who controls himself. That is why Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca are still remembered today. Not because they demanded respect, but because they lived by principles no one could take away. These 7 Stoic laws were never meant to impress you. They were meant to transform you. Master your emotions. Protect your boundaries. Stop rewarding disrespect. Let your discipline speak louder than your words, and let your character become your greatest strength. As Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." So from this day forward, stop chasing respect and start becoming a person who naturally commands it. Because the greatest punishment you can ever give to someone who underestimated you is becoming the person they can never manipulate, never control, and never disrespect again.